Yeah, what a player, what a career. Cameron Smith, welcome to NRL 360. I'm Ben Ikin, together with Paul Kent from the Daily Telegraph. Also at the desk tonight, Lara Pitt, James Super. Good evening to you both. PK, a momentous day in rugby league. Such was the gravity of Cameron Smith's effect on the NRL across a long and storied career. How will you remember his contribution to rugby league?
Ben, I've said for some time now about Cameron that when you put his highlight package together, essentially it's all it's going to do is show him lifting trophies. There's not a run in his career I can remember him making, not a tackle that stands out, but he just wins.
It's death by a thousand cuts.
It's death by a thousand cuts. He just wins. He won, obviously dominated through that origin period, 8 in a row for Queensland. And that's the hallmark of his greatness, is that he just found a way to win. And within that, there's countless examples, which we'll get to later in the show.
So he may not have a stack of highlights, but I tell you what, he's got one hell of a stat sheet when you look back on his career. We'll have a look now at some of the numbers. 430 first grade games, 42 state of origins, which is a record, 56 test matches for his country, second only to Darren Lockyer, 3 premierships, 2 Dally M's and 2 golden boots. James Super, where does he sit alongside the all-time greats?
Oh, he's got to be the greatest of all time. You listen to the likes of Andrew Johns, Mal Meninga, already immortals of the game. Joey says he's the best big game player that he has ever seen, and Mal echoes similar sentiments. So as much as Kenny's right, when you talk about his highlights reel, the game that springs to mind for me when you mention running was 2017 State of Origin series. He challenged himself and he was challenged in the lead up to that game. And there's a lot of similarities, I reckon, between Cameron Smith and Michael Jordan. We all watched The Last Dance. And the way that Smith would deliberately pick fights with, be it the Broncos, be it at State of Origin level, it was a little bit sociopathic and a little bit serial killer about how cold-blooded he was when it came to the ruthless art of winning.
What impressed you most, Lara, when you used to watch Cameron Smith play?
I think just he's the most composed and influential player I've seen since watching and loving rugby league. I don't think you'll ever be able to name a game where he looked under pressure. He just always looked comfortable out there, and that's the confidence that he was able to give everyone around him. And you mentioned at every level he did it, and he did it for 80 minutes every single week.
To your point on that too, when they got beaten by Cronulla in the grand final, there's a period really late in the game where he makes the wrong play, and I think he throws a pass, or he doesn't throw a pass he should have thrown, which could have got Melbourne over the line. And he kicked himself to death all summer about it, and he kept apologising to Craig Bellamy. Craig Bellamy said, look, mate, you made 70 tackles in the game. You're entitled to make a mistake. But he found it so hard to live with himself, because that was one of the few times he made the wrong decision. But that just shows you also how precise he is about the way he plays the game and how demanding he is on himself to get the right result.
But he's also a player, I don't think, that ever had a dip in form. Yes, you may be able to find error here and there, but he was, if anything, he was getting better. And right now, he could play on, we know that, and be the most influential player in the game next year.
Where's he sit for you, Ben? You've been around rugby league your entire life. In terms of Andrew Johns, Jonathan Thurston, Darren Lockyer, all those modern champion greats, put Wally Lewis in there as well. Is he the best?
So the thing that I look for in out-and-out champions, particularly when you start talking greatest of all time, I think of players who have the capacity to control tempo in games, such as their composure and calmness. And the thing I loved most about Andrew Johns, who had a stack of highlights, was how he could lift other players around him, how he could get other players into the game and make average look great. And when I watch Cameron Smith, I just see a step here, a pass there, all happening around the ruck that makes a 6 out of 10 forward play like an 8 out of 10 forward. And when you multiply that out by, 5 teammates playing in the middle, a couple of blokes either side on the edge, it makes the Melbourne Storm more than the sum of their individual parts. That's what the great players do. They can take bit parts, be the glue, and improve the whole. And
what about for you, Kenny? Where does he sit? Is he the best?
Yeah, probably. Look, it's going to be
We've got Benny Elias on later, and I think one of the measures of a great player is whether they can change their position. Like, people talk a lot about Billy Slater and what he's done for the fullback position. So has Cameron Has he had that subtlety in the game in what he's done with the number 9, or no other hooker's going to ever be like him?
Yeah, look, he hasn't. Yeah, he has changed the game. I remember talking to a coach once, and I said to him, I said, why is he so great? And he said to me, he said, I'll tell you why. He said, the great players, he said, you can game plan for them. He said, they've all got habits. They've all got things under pressure they like to do. He said, so what you got to do, he said, once you figure out what that is, you figure out a way to close it down. And he said, and then you can coach your team to correct that, to negate their impact there. He said, but then what happens with Cameron? He said, Cameron will go out and Cameron will figure out how you're shutting him down. So he'll start to change the way he plays.
He's got a plan B.
Right? But this is where he gets you. He said, because you can even, if you've got a good team defensively, you can even say, well, once we start doing that, he'll then start doing this, and this is how we'll shut that down. He said, then Cameron figures out you've done that, and figures out quicker than most, and then goes to plan C, and he said, your defence just can't keep going with him. He said, so...
He's got the smarts.
Yeah, there's a way to shut you, always to shut you down. He said, but with Cameron, he said, Cameron picks out very quickly what you're doing to negate him. He said, then he'll change. And he said, your defence just can't keep changing the same rate.
And then I asked you all to think today about a game or a season or a moment that you think might have best described his genius. And you go back to an interaction he had with Luke Lewis.
Well, this is what fascinates me about the game. And the game... It's such a thinking game at times, and I remember growing up, Ben, and the great playmakers were always 1, 2, 3 plays ahead of the game, and I used to try and figure out what they were looking at, what they saw, that they would know what was going to happen in 3 tackles time.
How'd you go? Did you figure it out?
Never did.
Okay.
Clearly. Very obviously didn't. But Luke Lewis tells a great story about when they were playing together for Australia, and he was sitting on the right side, and Cameron said to him, he said, stay where you are, I'll be back tackle 4. And he looked up and he thought, there's nothing happening here. And he said, Cameron's just worked left. He said, he came back. He said, by the time he came back tackle 4, he said, I'll hit the hole. He said, there's no one in front. He said, and he goes, you know that try I scored? That's it. But he said, I don't know what he saw. He said, but he saw something in the opposition defence that he knew there was going to be a hole and he knew how to create the hole, and then he came back and he had Louis there all ready to go to hit the hole.
Laura, what sticks out in your memory?
Well, it's the 2017 season, which I think as an individual will probably not ever be topped. He won absolutely everything, Cameron, that year, and he was 34 when he did it. It was the game against Parramatta. He was breaking Darren Lockyer's record for most games played. So it was a big milestone, and we know Melbourne love a milestone. It was week 1 of the finals in 2017, and Melbourne start the game poorly. They're behind 10-4 at halftime, and the story as it was relayed to me is that the players were preparing themselves for a spray from Craig Bellamy in the sheds at halftime, and he was on his way down at Amy Park. And Cameron just jumped up in front of the playing group before Craig could get there, and he addressed the playing group himself. And we know he's a leader and he's the captain, but that wasn't often the done thing. Craig would do that. So by the time Craig got to the sheds, he listened to the back end of what Cameron had to say. He calmed himself down, and he didn't have to say very much to add to what the captain had said. And needless to say, they went out in the second half. They won it. He played a starring role, 18-16 over Para, in his milestone game. So that speaks, I think, a lot to the influence, the composure, and also the unique relationship that he has with his coach, Craig Bellamy, that he can do that.
I know last year's grand final performance impressed you, Hoops.
It wasn't pretty, Ben, but it was gritty. It's the biggest stage possible, and you touched on tempo, and the great players have this ability, and Andrew Johns was one, Wally Lewis was another one. They know when to hit the accelerator, they know when to pump the brakes a little bit, and I thought that game really emphasised just the level of control that Cameron is able to have and the influence that he can have over a game. Without him, there's no way that Melbourne are as comprehensive as they are in that performance. And let's not forget, Penrith had won 17 games in a row.
That's right. We're going to have to be very good, Melbourne, to beat them. All right, let's have a listen to Craig Bellamy talk about his former captain.
I think he's obviously the greatest player that, well, certainly I've ever seen. And, from what he's done, his record, well over 400 games, no one's gone over 400 games. I think he's played nearly 100 rep games for Australia and Queensland at that time, and with the success he's had, as a captain as well. It's quite remarkable. That hasn't been done in the game before, and I really can't see it happening again. So, like I say, it is hard to, I suppose, describe his effect on our club and his effect on the game. But probably the biggest thing for me is how long he's done it for. We've had other players, great players that have contributed heavily to, to the quality of our game. But to do it for near on 20 years, like that's unparalleled. And like I say, I'd have no hesitation, in my opinion, that he's the best player the game's ever seen.
PK, who do you think owes who more in that working relationship? Bellamy
it's
to Smith or Smith to Bellamy?
Oh, look, I got no doubt that Craig contributed heavily to the way that Cameron's game evolved. Having said that, Craig's given every player he's ever coached the same treatment, and this guy's the one that came through and emerged as the best. So I think that it's one of those relationships, I think, where they're both responsible for each other. It's got to be fascinating now to see how Melbourne do go. Like, we keep tipping Melbourne. They've lost the first of the big three. They've lost the second of the big three. Well, now they've lost the big three. Okay.
When it comes to Cameron, though, and Craig, it was explained to me that when Cameron first arrived in Melbourne from Queensland, he was laid back, very relaxed, and it was actually Craig who instilled in him the level of professionalism, the standards, and that's pretty much what any player who's played for Craig will tell you, is that, he might not give them, that football ability is innate, obviously, in someone like Cameron Smith, but he's the one that will drive home the standards and make them, perform, train, be professional, and that's ultimately what Cameron arrived at Melbourne maybe not having.
Yeah, but you remember a conversation we had with Michael Maguire once, and he was talking about when he was running the water for the Storm, and then during the week he'd do a little bit of video session with the spine, and there was a time there where they had a play that they wanted to put on, and Michael Maguire said, look, if we can get to here tackle 3, then we'll be in position to be able to do it. And Cameron was like, well, why don't we get there and tackle 2? And he said, well, mate, if you can get there and tackle 2, get there and tackle 2. He said, then Cameron got out and just zipped one ball out of dummy half, zipped the next one out of dummy half. So in 2 plays, where everyone else takes 3 to get there, they were there for it. And so, and Madge always says how when you used to run the water and they'd be on the field talking to each other, him and Billy and Cooper, just the things he was picking up that they were seeing in the opposition live in the game, which was just, it'd be fascinating to ever be able to sit there.
Craig Bellamy has referred to Cameron Smith as one of the best coaches in the NRL.
Yeah.
His industry IQ's off the charts. His game management is just...
But it's like having another coach on the field every single week.
And you go back to the great moments. You go back to how many times did Queensland in Origin, where 3 minutes to go or 2 minutes to go, and they just tic-tac up the field, perfectly placed, kicked the field goal. New South Wales are fizzing them out that way and out. You know what I mean? Like Queensland just were dead perfect, almost, like a black heart. You know what I mean? There was just no emotion in it whatsoever. It was just, there's no sympathy for us Blues there.
No. But look, let's go to the other side of Cameron Smith now. For all his success and everything he has achieved in the game, he isn't overly popular with fans. Lara, you're looking at me like you want to answer this question.
Because they don't like a winner, and New South Wales people don't like a winner.
I disagree.
Well, there's you guys are going to go on your way on this. I think from a football perspective, but
it's not a football perspective question.
It is, because it's about him as a football player.
That's not. If people don't like him, they've got reasons they don't like him. It's not necessarily because they don't like him as a football player.
Well, I think that I'm answering it from the perspective of what he put on the field.
Yes.
And I think that people and fans didn't like him necessarily because he managed the game. Often he was another referee, the way he held himself
you hit the nail on the head
on the field.
That could be the way he played football.
Well, let's talk about his relationship with referees. Let's talk about his relationship with referees. There's been a long-time theory that Cameron was essentially a koala bear with the match officials, and the more experience that he got, the more that he led Melbourne, the more that he led Queensland and Australia, the more influence he seemed to be able to have at critical moments in big games where he'd slow things down, he'd want to engage in dialogue, he'd invariably...
He'd con the referees.
He had a knack of being able to get away with a fair bit.
But you want that in your team if you're coaching.
100%.
That's the guy you want.
And if they're not my team, I don't like it.
Yeah. And so to your question about why does he polarise people, I think, let's go back to 2019 and, we all had very differing views on the Bailey Simonson incident. There was a match a final, which was a grand final qualifier down at Amy Park. Jared Croker had an injured knee. Cameron comes in and bumps him off the ball after Cooper Cronk had scored a try. It was a cheap shot.
So that were the three things for me that stand out that rub people the wrong way. Was clearly the salary cap scandal that engulfed the Storm.
We didn't even mention that. He's never. I think the biggest thing that sticks in people's craw about that, Ben, he's never addressed it.
The Alex McKinnon issue polarised the game, and then the wrestle for many, who I've said on this show, I'm ambivalent towards the wrestle, but most people hate it, and Melbourne have been the champions at it, and Cameron Smith is their captain and the best at that defensive technique in rugby league.
Look, for all the greatness of Cameron, one of the things that we haven't mentioned is statistically he's one of the top half dozen tacklers in the competition. Has been for years. When they talk about effective tackle making, that's because he wrestles so well. And a lot of people don't like that. He's a polarising figure in that respect. He's a polarising figure for a whole lot of reasons. The referees, from a football point of view, the cheap shots that he's got this ability to drop an elbow on a bloke or drop a knee into a bloke or to rub a bloke the wrong. He does all that, and he does it like it's an accident. Gets up, innocent me, butter doesn't melt in my mouth. You got the Cronk fallout. He's never addressed that. You've got the.
Well, he addressed it in his book.
Well, he didn't. It got about 3 paragraphs.
And let's be honest. This whole retirement saga.
He's waited for the day before the competition starts, when we all should be talking about tomorrow night's game in the opening round.
Here's the other thing.
And now we're talking about Cameron.
That's what I can't reconcile, is that for someone
he could have said it a month ago and he would have had his day in the sun for days.
Someone so deliberate on a footy field, this whole retirement thing has seemingly been so clunky.
You really think so?
I do.
Or is it about him?
No, I think he thought that he'd be right to play and he'd probably jag a contract, and the less he trained and the further he got
a contract. He had 3 clubs begging him.
No. He would have had an opportunity to play somewhere, so he left it and he left it and he left it. And the longer he stayed away from training, away from a club, he became less certain about whether or not he actually wanted to play.
We've just sat here and talked about how he's the greatest player of all. That's not how you expect the greatest player of all to retire today. It felt empty. His family wasn't there. The players were in there.
He's not going to be at the game tomorrow night.
Yeah, it didn't feel like the appropriate way to step away from the game.
This is part of the enigma, Lara, of Cameron. Do we really know the real Cameron? After 20 years of playing over 400 games, fronting up to X amount of press conferences, do you think that you really know who the real Cameron Smith is?
Which is probably the way he wants it.
I don't know. I think he was always regarded for the first 3/4 of his career as a fairly genuine bloke.
I think it's only been the last couple of years that
yeah, but
it's changed.
all the curtain's been pulled back.
Okay, where do we see his future in the game now that he's retired?
Take his pick. He'll probably turn up in commentary, I dare say, as an expert analyst somewhere.
Melbourne have already offered him whatever he wants. He just has to write the role and he can have it. So I imagine they think he'll have some time enjoying Queensland and enjoying family, and then he could be in their football team.
You might want to get one of those rich ambassador deals that are apparently going around.
Just one of them, yeah.
Too soon. Hashtag too soon.
My little mate raised a conspiracy theory today. What's the trade deadline this year? It's been moved out to August 1.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Sonny Bill came back last year for the Roosters, made his little cameo appearance.
There has been a theory that he might play for, is it the Currumbin Eagles in the Gold Coast competition? I think Maguire coaches.
That's my old junior club.
Side.
He said he's going to have 12 months off pretty much today. So.
Right. Did it surprise you that when the statues were unveiled, Smith, Slater, it just seemed a space that could have been filled there. They were never known as the big
Because they never passed to each other. There's generally someone in the middle passing from one to the other, wasn't there?
Yeah.
I don't think that'll happen given what's been going on.
But it's disappointing.
I'm talking about the fallout. If you want to talk about it, look, we don't want to address it. Him and Cooper have had a fallout. They don't want to address it. I've spoken to Cooper about it. He said,
There's space up the back there.
Where I sit. And Cameron just brought out a book and gave it 3 paragraphs in the book. When everyone knows it's a story. When they were great mates until Cooper signed with a team that was capable of beating him, which ultimately came to fruition when the Roosters beat the Storm that year in the grand final.
And then they won another premiership the year after.
And from that moment, never spoke. And hasn't spoken. And they keep making out in public, they'll say they're great friends. But Cameron has never picked up the phone and actually said to him, mate, how you been? What have you done for the last 3 years?
Matt Tripp was asked about it today, about There is space in between, but he threw Craig Bellamy as a potential. You didn't mention. No one asked about Cooper, but he threw up Craig Bellamy as the potential to be in the middle.
In all seriousness, Cooper does deserve it. Like it's always been. You talk about the great combinations.
Can I tell you something? If
Modern
Cooper hadn't
rugby
signed the
league,
Roosters, he'd be there.
if he hadn't, correct, 100%.
All right, Cameron Munster enjoyed much success playing alongside Cameron Smith, and he's been kind enough to join us for a chat tonight. Cameron, thanks for your time. Tell me, when did you guys find out about the Cameron Smith retirement news?
Probably about 15 minutes before they made it published. I guess he was trying to present Jesse with his first captaincy official jersey, and then after that, he just pretty much told the whole group that was there, and it's a bit disappointing for the game and himself, but he thought it was the right time to go out a winner, and no dramas with that.
He's known as one of the great winners of all time in rugby league, in fact, in Australian and world sport. So let me ask you, what did you learn about winning off Cameron Smith?
There wasn't any losing in his mentality, that was for sure. Just going into games and knowing that he was putting a jersey on next to me, I was pretty comfortable. Sorry, mate, someone's trying to ring me to be a smart ass. A bit rattled here. It's the way he goes about his thing. He's always calm and collected, and he was always doing his job. And the thing I learned about him was just always be calm and respectful to everyone he played against, but just always go and being confident when you go out and play. That's what you really admire about him as a person. Sorry about not talking too much.
All good, mate. We get those games played on us too. Yeah. So we'll keep asking questions. You just keep pausing the phone calls.
Cameron, just tell us, you've spent the season, off-season, obviously training without him there. How much is the Storm going to have to actually change the way they play now, given he won't be there at dummy half passing the ball?
Yeah, a lot, to be honest. I guess when the club or the team needed something to happen, he was always the one to deliver, especially when it got to those crunches in those tight games. He'd either hit short on your front rowers or get the ball at the back of shape to one of our halves or our fullback and picking the right time 9 times out of 10. So, really going to be tough for us, but we've got a good hooker in Brendan Smith, and he's pretty much similar to the way Smithy plays. But at the same time, he's probably a better ball runner than Smithy. But with Cam, he summed up the situation a lot better. And we'll obviously have to play the game plan to Brennan, and that's his running game. And us as halves and our middles and everyone around the team needed to push forward on him.
All right, Cameron. Well, thanks for your time tonight. Good luck tomorrow night against the South Sydney Rabbitohs. Everybody is pumped for the first game of footy in 2021, and good luck for the season ahead.
Sorry, guys. Apologies. I won't do that again. I'll make sure I put everyone on just do not disturb.
All good, buddy. Okay. That's like the latest practical joke in rugby league, right?
Oh, they love it.
Get on a face.
You've got to put it on Do Not Disturb, or else you cop an absolute hammering.